Iran's foreign minister urges the United States to stop using economic war as leverage in negotiations held to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal. Mohammad Javad Zarif made the call in a telephone conversation with his British counterpart. He also stressed that Washington must fully return to its obligations under the nuclear accord known as the JCPOA. Zarif said he and British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab have agreed on the necessity of resuming full compliance with the nuclear deal. The US unilaterally pulled out of the deal in 2018 and reimposed sanctions on Iran, prompting remedial commitment cuts from Tehran. Iran and the remaining signatories are now engaged in talks to revive the accord. Iran has repeatedly emphasized that Washington has to take the first step by removing all the sanctions in a verifiable manner. Jason Unruhe is a political commentator joining us out of Ontario. Jason, welcome. At what point do you think the US will realize that Iran isn't going to capitulate to what it calls, or in the face of what it describes as economic terrorism from the United States?
Well, the United States, if anything, has been a tremendously stubborn opponent for many people across the world. And sometimes they believe their own hype and feel that, part of American exceptionalism is that they cannot lose. They're always right, and they will always triumph in the end. I think that if we've seen anything from the United States, it's that they're probably going to push this as far as they possibly can. I mean, we can look at, for example, the situation in Afghanistan. I mean, it's almost a 20-year war that has been going on because the United States has been simply unable to simply accept that they cannot win. There was a great stubbornness to it. But I think that the point at which they will realize that they cannot win with Iran in this situation might be not tremendously further away. I think that the main barometer when understanding when the United States might give up in this regard is the level of economic development that Iran reaches. The whole goal of this is to undermine the Iranian economy. It's to undermine Iran as a regional power. So if Iran has a strong economy, then the goal or the tactic, what it is they want, isn't working. So I think that that's a really good way. I think that if Iran's economy were to suddenly decline very sharply or severely, that would be a sign to the U.S. to continue the pressure. But as it stands right now, Iran's not doing too bad. Obviously, suffering from the ill effects of COVID, just as every country in the world is right now. But I think that's going to be the main barometer, is the economic stability of Iran.
I mean, Jason, I was born in this country when the whole world was supporting the Saddam regime in attacking Iran in quite a vicious way and supporting it with chemical weapons and all types of weapons. And the maximum pressure campaign during that era, it was 1,000 times worse, and Iran didn't back down then. So what's to say it will back down now?
Well, I would say probably not. I mean, if they could survive something much worse, then they can survive this too. I mean, that's just basically the reality of a lot, quite a few countries around the world. Those who have been victims of the United States, they have learned to deal with much less. They have learned to deal with much greater hardships. Another good example would be Vietnam. The United States had every superiority possible over their enemy in that war, and yet they were still simply unable to win. There is a measure of defiance that exists within certain people around the world, given their historical experiences, that make their spirits very, very hard to break. Afghanistan is another one. That is a country that no empire thus far has been able to crack. And I think that a lot of the self-sufficiency that's come out of Iran, and I've seen that a lot with the current, speeches and whatnot about, the current presidential election, that a lot of candidates are talking about more self-sustainability, and with that being economically possible to weather the economic storm of the United States. So I think that the historical precedent for surviving U.S. pressure is certainly there, and it's not something that Iran is going to give up anytime soon. So I think that the genuine resistance to U.S. imperialism is always going to be with the Iranian people for the foreseeable future.
Okay, Jason, thank you very much indeed for your contribution and your thoughts. Jason Unruhe there, political commentator joining us out of Ontario.